What's going on, Packer fans? Welcome back to the Pack-A-Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. Happy Packers-Lions game day. I hope this episode finds you well. Thank you so much for joining me. We got huge news on Saturday in the fact that David Bakhtiari, per Jeremy Fowler, is set to make his 2021-2022 season debut for the Green Bay Packers against the Detroit Lions in a game that necessarily doesn't mean a whole heck of a lot and might be a glorified exhibition game. It is anything but for David Bakhtiari, and certainly for fans who have been awaiting this day for seemingly forever, over a year. You sort of get this perfect juxtaposition, right? A year ago and 1 year and 1 week ago, we learned that David Bakhtiari is out for the playoffs, tore his ACL, and it's this devastating blow to the Packers and their playoff hopes. And I think, Green Bay could have won without him, played their worst game at the wrong time against Tampa Bay, but certainly Bakhtiari being out for that game did not help matters either, and it was a big blow to them at the time, and it certainly was in that game against Tampa as well. Now we get the exact reverse. David Bakhtiari comes back to the Packers right as they're set to make their run towards hopefully another Super Bowl. He gets to hopefully, work some rust off against the Detroit Lions. We don't know how much he'll play. And per Jeremy Fowler, he is set to make his season debut barring a late change or, whatever the case may be, maybe rethinking it, whatever. But as of this moment, as I'm recording this, David Bakhtiari is set to play in green and gold against the Lions. And it's just such an amazing thing to see. And it sounds like Jair Alexander is trending in the right direction towards playing in the divisional game, although he's not going to play in this game. Randall Cobb seems like he's trending to play in the divisional game. Zadarius Smith had a, cryptic tweet that maybe, we'll see. Again, I'll believe it when I see it, but who knows? Josh Myers is making his way back. We'll see about Billy Turner, but this team is certainly getting healthy at exactly the right time, and seeing David Bakhtiari at that left tackle spot is going to be, I think, a big boost to a team that doesn't necessarily need a big boost. I think it is one. And, we talk about all the time about a potential, acquisition in season, whether it be a trade deadline, whether it be in the NFL, the NBA, or how a player can change the dynamic of a team. Green Bay is the number one team in football and may legitimately get back Josh Myers, David Bakhtiari, Randall Cobb, Jair Alexander, Zadarius Smith. Who knows, right? We've talked about it forever. I'm not giving you any new information other than the fact that Bakhtiari is coming back on Sunday, but it's still crazy to think about. And I do think it is important for Bakhtiari to play in this game if possible and potentially work off some of that rust. I would still trust him to start in the divisional round even if he couldn't. But what a huge step for him to be able to get in games, see how it feels, and just hopefully get back to being David Bakhtiari, which is what everyone's been hoping for this entire time. And I don't think anyone cares, right? And what I mean by that is whether it took him, whether he was back for week 1 of the regular season or back right now, if this is David Bakhtiari, if he's 100% healthy and he's ready to go and he's all pro David Bakhtiari, and I'm not saying he's going to be that, I don't want to put that expectation on him, but if he's anywhere close to that, then taking a year plus to sit him out and get him right was by far and away worth it, because he will be hopefully healthy at exactly the right time heading into the playoffs, and the long term of David Bakhtiari certainly matters as well. They get the best of all worlds. They were the best team in the regular season without him. They get him back at the most important time, and they hopefully secure his long-term health as well. But just phenomenal, great, stupendous, fantastic news that David Bakhtiari is set and ready to play. As we mentioned yesterday, Josh Myers also ready to play, but he was officially activated from IR, which allows him to play in this game, but that'll be a big boost as well. And then other quick news and notes, Abdullah Anderson and Ladarius Hamilton were both elevated off the practice squad for this game. I think the interesting one here is Hamilton, because I would actually argue, and it's in very, small sample size, it's a very small sample size and very minuscule snap counts, but I would actually argue that I've liked Ladarius Hamilton much more in again, limited snaps than I have either Jonathan Garvin or Tipa Nalai. Now, maybe had Hamilton played as many snaps as certainly a Garvin, maybe he looks worse, right? I don't know. But in the snaps that I've seen, if you were to tell me right now, who do you want as your number 3 guy behind Rashawn Gary and Preston Smith? Obviously, besides Zadarius Smith, that'd be nice. But who would you want as your number 3 guy on the edge? I would actually say I'd rather see Ladarius Hamilton out there rather than Jonathan Garvin, rather than Tipa Nalai. Now, we'll see. Maybe this gives him an opportunity to prove himself once again, and we'll see if he gets those snaps and can make the most of them. That is a spot that is giving Green Bay trouble. Tipa and Garvin have really struggled, and you have the ability to do some work when those two are in the game. A lot of times they're in the game at the same time when both Preston and Rashawn are resting at the same time. And all of a sudden, your offense, when Gary and Smith are off the field, has the ability to do some work. You just don't have edge guys that are setting the edge as well, and certainly not guys that are getting to the quarterback. That's a major difference. So, I don't think Ladarius Hamilton's going to come in and change the world by any means, but I think that he could be somebody who's at least in the conversation of potentially being better than either Tipa or Jonathan Garvin. So we'll see. Maybe he puts together a nice game and can use that as momentum, but that's one name, at least out of the blue, that I'm going to kind of be keeping a little bit more of an eye on, because Green Bay hasn't really solidified that number 3 and number 4 edge spot behind Rashawn Gary and behind Preston Smith. Before we get to what I'm kind of watching for in this game, I've had some people ask me, like, what would potentially be your offensive line if everyone's healthy, going into this? And to me, it's pretty easy. To me, obviously, left tackle is David Bakhtiari. Your left guard's clearly John Runyon Jr. Your center, to me, is clearly Josh Myers. Your right tackle is Billy Turner if he's healthy, and Dennis Kelly if he's not. And then right guard, I would lean Royce Newman over Lucas Patrick. If they wanted to go Lucas Patrick, I certainly would not debate that. You could make an argument for that as well. The best football between anyone that could potentially play in that spot was Lucas Patrick at right guard in 2020, who played really good football at that spot. So I think he struggles as a center. I think he's really struggled at left guard. But for whatever reason, you put Lucas Patrick at right guard, and he's played pretty darn well at that spot. So if you want to have a conversation there, I would even potentially listen to a conversation about Dennis Kelly staying at right tackle and Billy Turner going to right guard if he's healthy. But to me, the left to right, or at least left to center, is Bakhtiari, Runyon, and then obviously Josh Myers at center. And then I think those other spots you could play around with a little bit more. I would expect them to put Billy Turner in at right tackle as soon as he's healthy. And then again, you have the question at right guard whether you want to go Newman or Patrick, and sort of pick which one you want. I would lead Newman, would not hate Patrick. I would understand either of those moves, but that's certainly what I would do. It's possible Lucas Patrick could stay at center. Matt LaFleur's mentioned that already. He's going to get his best 5 guys and whoever he feels is his best 5 out on the field. But for me, if I'm getting my best 5 guys out there, I'm going to go, I think Royce Newman's better than people think. I'm going left to right, Bakhtiari, Runyon, Myers, Newman, and then Billy Turner. And I could make an argument, as I mentioned yesterday as well, for Dennis Kelly over Billy Turner, but I know they're not going to do that, so we're not going to go too much down that specific rabbit hole. All right, what are we watching for in this game? I'm not going to make a ton of this, right? This is a nothing game. No, that's not to say that there's not things to watch and not things that are important. So I have 8 things that I'm going to be kind of keeping a close eye on in this game. Number 1, how did Josh Myers and David Bakhtiari look? These are 2 players who I believe are integral to the success of the Green Bay Packers. I know that Green Bay has made do with a much worse offensive line this season, but I truly believe, unequivocally, that if Green Bay wants to succeed, at some point they're going to get behind, at some point they're going to have to throw the ball around, and at some point they're going to face some teams with some really dynamic pass rushers who are doing everything they can to disrupt the play. I think in the playoffs, you're playing at Lambeau Field. That grass may play a little bit slower. Those receivers might not be getting off their routes. Corners are generally more physical, and you're going to have to hold up at the point of attack. You're going to have to run the ball, and I think the offensive line is going to be tremendously important. I would go as far to say is I don't believe Green Bay can make a successful Super Bowl run with the offensive line as it was these past couple weeks, even though they've been successful with it, right? If you told me that Yash, Runyon, Patrick, Newman, Kelly was their starting 5 through the remainder of the playoffs, I would say I don't think they can navigate that to win a Super Bowl. I shouldn't say. I think it's possible. I don't think it's likely. I think they would struggle with that at some point. I think some team would give them enough issues and enough pressure to make it difficult where they would eventually lose a game. Certainly not impossible that they could win a Super Bowl with that group, but I just think it becomes much less likely. If all of a sudden Bakhtiari and Runyon and Myers and whether it's Newman or Patrick and Billy Turner are back, even if it's Dennis Kelly, like you getting Myers and Bakhtiari back, if they're anywhere close to what they should be, I really like that line, and I think they can run block better, and I think you will see this offensive line solidify itself and really become a major step up from what we saw at any point during this regular season. So this is huge to me, and I'm number 1A on my list is watching to see how Myers and Bakhtiari look, how much they play, How well do they play? All of that for those two. I think it's going to be incredibly important. Number 2, of course, no injuries, right? It's the biggest thing you could have as a success out of this game. I would much rather lose this game by 100 and have no injuries than win by 100 and have even one injury to a player who could potentially affect their Super Bowl run. So that's the scoreboard, right? If you're scoreboard watching, the scoreboard is how many players go out of the game with an injury, and certainly how many would have a serious injury. All you want in this game is no injuries. No injuries, no injuries, no injuries. And I know, it's like almost a thought process, right? If you're in golf, if you go up to the tee and say, don't hit a bad shot, what are you going to do? You're going to hit a bad shot. You have to go in there and think aggressively and say, I'm going to hit a good shot, or I'm going to crush this ball, which is really why I think Matt LaFleur wants to go into this game saying, hey, we're going in to win this game. If your goal is to not get injured, you're probably going to get injured, right? If your goal is to win the game, hopefully everything goes according to plan and you can avoid injuries while doing so. Number 3, can Green Bay get off to a quick start? Especially if the starters are playing right. This is a team that has not started well throughout the course of this season. They've not started well in Detroit over the last handful of years. Let's see if Green Bay can get off to a quick start with their starters in the game, maybe get a couple touchdowns and get the starters out of there. That's what I would like to see, and maybe get on the right track of, hey, we're not going to just punt the first quarter away and win in quarters 2 through 4. We're going to play a 4-quarter game, and that starts by coming off to a quick start, especially against a team that's not very good in the Detroit Lions. Number 4 is special teams, right? Even though that this is a glorified exhibition game and some starters might sit early, all the key special teams guys are still going to play in this game. Your punter, your kicker, obviously all your key gunners and everything. There's nobody from a special team standpoint. You're not resting, Oren Burks on special team. He's playing, right? So I want to see this special teams continue to quote unquote Mike McCarthy-esque stack success. I want to see them not blow things. I want to see them continue to gain a measure of consistency because they've played pretty good over the last couple weeks. Can they continue that and not all of a sudden, raise these way bigger questions that you have to redo and spend a ton of time on special teams these next 2 weeks? Just keep the status quo and continue that momentum from the past couple weeks. Number 5 is, of course, Jordan Love. He's going to get in this game in some capacity at some point, you would think. I would expect that we see him at minimum by the third quarter, if not at some point in the second quarter. This is a major game for Jordan Love, as well as the Packers' evaluation of Jordan Love. And as I've said all this week, this is about gathering intel. This is about gathering as much information as possible. Jordan Love's taken a ton of reps with the number ones over the course of the last few months, couple months, whatever it's been. Can he put that work out on the field and really be at least take a step, right? And here's the thing with Jordan Love. You're not looking for him to go out and have the Matt Flynn 6-touchdown game, right? You're just looking for improvement. Can he take things that he struggled with against KC and can he do better? Can he figure out blitzes? Can he get the ball out of his hands? Can he distribute to his playmakers? Does he have continued control of the offense? You're just looking for consistent improvement. It's not going to be perfect. He's probably going to miss some throws. He's going to make some mistakes. He's maybe going to force a ball or two, but can he show growth? And that's what I'm really looking for. And if he goes and balls out, hey, maybe he ups his trade value or maybe Green Bay rethinks what they want to do this offseason. But either way, getting intel on Jordan Love from this game is huge for the Green Bay Packers and maybe for other teams keeping an eye on him as well. Number 6, if we do get some, new players in the game and rotating in, can somebody flash? Can a Patrick Taylor, I think, is one to look at for sure. Can he go in there and show himself? And it's not maybe for this year, but for future years. Can Oren Burks flash as a linebacker? Does a Vernon Scott get more time and maybe he show that he has something? Is there a player that can flash in this time in a regular season game that maybe you can think better of as Green Bay eventually gets ready for their offseason? I don't think their lineup's going to change too much based on anything that happens in this game, but you always like players taking the most of their opportunity, or making the most of it, I should say. And I would love to see a player step up, especially if they're getting more playing time in this game. I'm also looking to see what the starting offensive line is in this game. Do they start Bakhtiari? Do they start Myers at center? Do they bring him in off the bench? I'm very curious to see what that rotation is going to be, and does that give us any hints going forward as to what the playoff offensive line may look like? And then last but not least, can they maintain their momentum? They're playing as the best team in football. They're coming off a nice win against Minnesota. They put some wins together. I don't know how much I really think that this game, win or loss, matters, but I would love to see. The Cowboys just put 50 points up in a meaningless game against the Eagles, right? And I know they were sort of fighting for some seeding and played their starters longer than probably Green Bay will, but man, it'd be nice if they could go in and into the postseason with some momentum, because in a way, the last thing you want is to like lose to the Lions and then have 2 weeks off, right? And even if it's because, Jordan Love and your backups were in or whatever, like you still like going out with a win, getting a really nice win, putting up some points, feeling good about yourself, and then heading into the playoffs is certainly going to feel better than losing to the Lions, even if it's all your backups. Like, I don't get even a loss and then sitting for 2 weeks before a divisional round game feels worse than a win and then going out on top and putting up some points against a poor Lions team. So can they maintain momentum, and can they put up a strong performance, pick up a win, and go into the playoffs with a little bit of that momentum moving forward? That is going to do it for me today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you enjoy today's game even more. I will certainly be watching those 8 things I just mentioned, but how great is it to have David Bakhtiari back? Speaking of being back, I will be right back here tomorrow with an all-new episode breaking down the game in totality, so make sure you are subscribed if you are not already. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.